Good, busy. Just
Uh,
been traveling all over.
where'd you just come from?
This morning I was in Maryland.
Now the unloving where, hey, what are you doing summertime, the peak of summer? Yes, we've got, BBL Hero, we've got Moxie, that type of thing. But what if there's something non-invasive, no downtime type of procedure? So to me, that's where I gauge that clear silk side of things. Needless to say, from the clear V side of things, for me, it's anyone who maybe or with Clear V is an addition to that. Obviously, the newer Pulse dye has 1064 on it. In addition, the primer, but those that have an older Pulse dye are not going to be able to treat deeper conditions. So for me, they're a good target for 1064.
Yeah, well said, Phil. Honestly, from my perspective, in terms of like when you go out to actually cold call a specific product, this is not so dissimilar from everything else we're prospecting on. I think it all really revolves around solid pre-call planning, building a list, finding your targets, and then say if you have a targeted list of 10, 15, or maybe as many as 20 accounts, the night before, the week before, however you kind of build out or plan your week, go through and identify like who are these practices, who do I need to ask for, what are the voids in their business. And to me, like the emphasis is always on the voids, right? Like what gaps can I fill, and then just go into it with an open mind. Go book a meeting and don't try and spill your candy in the lobby. And I always joke with Zach, vomit on them when you go right through the door with all the features and benefits and bullshit we have. It's just try and get that meeting, and then ask a lot of really great questions to get you to those voids.
Very true. Very true. Fill those unmet needs.
Totally.
I think it's important as well to to build off what Alex is saying. When you're building your routes, incorporate some current customers that have BBL but don't have 1064 in there to kind of warm you up and get the juices flowing as you start cold calling, and really start asking them questions about what are the misses, like what Alex is saying, what are their gaps in their business with their current vascularity? Are they struggling treating rosacea with BBL in 3 treatments, or is it taking 3 to 5? And then that way you can open up a pain point and target it for our clear silk, or maybe they're not able to shut down veins specifically with or their telangiectasias that are a little bit thicker on their cheeks with rosacea. So now you have an angle for clear V. So it's always good to incorporate some of those current customers on your route to figure out some more pain points. And then when you hit a new business the next way, if they don't have a Cyton, that they're for sure hitting those problems in their clinics.
Well said. Yeah. Well said. Pain points.
Yeah, I think they nailed it pretty well. You want to, when it comes to the mJoule, well, not the mJoule V anymore, but we're going to still lead with BBL in most cold calls. It's still going to be the known, the sexy, the brand name, and then and analyzing and figuring out if Mox is the right fit or if 1064 is the right fit. Clinics that have a LaserMD already, it's a great sales tool to say, hey, this BBL mJoule fits perfectly. We don't need to talk about the Moxie because we've already got a great product in LaserMD, but we can add on this 1064 platform to the mJoule, and you have now best in class for vascular. You have a great year-round pigment option with LaserMD, and then obviously you have the BBL doing all of those other things. So I actually just thought of this, but targeting LaserMDs and Lutronic customers generally would probably be a good list to start off with for putting I'm just going to call it the mJoule V for today. Putting the mJoule V in those offices would be a great fit.
I'm still calling it that too.
Yeah, totally. and to like kind of just touch on really what everyone has said here, it's from my perspective, you're not going in and asking a bunch of questions to find that void right on a cold call, right? We always want to Cooper's famous for saying you want to sell the sizzle before you sell the steak, right? And so it's build the buzz, get the hype going, show them kind of that wow factor photo, whether that's a clear V or clear silk photo or a deep resurfacing photo. Get in there so that then, and I think we'll probably talk about this in subsequent slides, then you can really ask some of the targeted or pointed questions to get us to the point of them realizing, oh, aha, I need this. I need ClearV. I need ClearSilk.
I think to build on that again, use your show pad, right? How do you call for 1064? Use your assets, right? Utilize the demo video that one of my customers has. It's called Ethan Demo in Showpad, where it's literally watching veins disappear. Get that sizzle factor, like Alex said, and show them what they're missing if they don't utilize going after veins within their clinic, and how easy it is. That's the biggest thing, is showing them that it's something that's easy, repeatable, and consistent. And our assets that Karin has put together throughout Showpad, and all of the stuff that we're constantly gathering in the field, use it to your advantage. Like Alex said, use photos, use Showpad. It's going to get them interested and excited so that you can book that meeting and move them throughout the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we talk about materials, let's touch on that topic again. How do you lead in with that first conversation? So how do you present that sizzle before you go in with the steak? Like, what are some of your questions? And these are some of the pointers you gave me, but do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Like, do you want to explain those examples? Who wants to go first this time?
I think it's important when you're having these conversations that, right, you don't want to leave it open-ended. You want to leave it open-ended, but you want to make sure that you have a path of where you're going down. So for example, how much rosacea are you seeing, right? You can get more specific in that and saying, hey, when it's specifically here in our region, as we go through crazy fluctuations in temperature, yesterday was 100 and humid, and, in 3 short months, it's going to be -10 and freezing. So the human body reacts differently. So a lot of people flush with rosacea. So are you seeing seasonality changes in your skin? And how often is that coming into play when patients coming in asking for rosacea treatments, right? So you can even be a little bit more specific as far as like how much rosacea you're seeing to really target the pain that's happening. That's usually, go ahead.
To that point, Ethan, I think it's important to know, like, as you're exploring, like, where that, like, let's say, conditional void is in the business, obviously we're generally speaking, Sciton has historically been a clinically focused sale, right? So we want to emphasize that. We want to emphasize that we're changing patients' lives, we're helping them treat their concerns, address rosacea. But then I find it really imperative that at some point you flip it to the ROI, you flip it to the business conversation, where at that junction, it's like, okay, if you don't have a solution for this, it's a little bit more organic than me soapboxing it here, but okay, if you don't have a solution for this, what are you doing? And oftentimes they'll say either they're referring it out or they're just not addressing the problem. And at that point, in some organic way, you ask them, like, and how much is that costing your business? Right. And that's the wow factor moment. It's like, holy shit, we've got a $200,000, $300,000 a year problem here. How much are you willing to spend to fix that problem?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things I've noticed, with the Sciton products from a scar treatment option scenario is that, a lot of, especially plastics, they're using the ProFrac for scar revision. Sometimes it's not delegatable. All the time they have to inject blocks, because there is that level of pain. Not saying it doesn't work. Obviously, we all know that the ProFrac is a great option for scars, but if it is that surgical scar that doesn't necessarily need that heavier type treatment, that's one of my ins, in that question, that painless scar treatment option. I remember having a chat with one of our KOLs, our plastic KOLs, and he was using ProFractional. And I said, well, why don't you use ClearSilk? Because then you can give it to your nurse. You don't have to block. You've got no problems. You just, pass that off and it's passive revenue for you. So to me, again, there's that ROI, but there's also the lack of time that the specialist needs to spend with the patient from that scar revision standpoint. So whilst we already have options, there's always another option that potentially is better for the specialist.
Love that insight, understanding what the practice might need in terms of time investment or delegatability.
And one thing in the Pacific Northwest that a lot of folks are are focused on is being more inclusive and diverse with who we're able to treat in, with the modalities. And obviously with Moxie, we can do that, but with BB or with Clear Silk, you really have an option that's with minimal to no downtime. I mean, really no downtime. And a lot of practices are looking for that. And up until now, when you get into a new practice, the idea isn't selling them a mJoule X with BBL and Clear Silk. It just isn't something that we've done a lot of. But with the smaller platform, it's going to make a much more sense as a first platform for some of these practices that are looking for mild, no downtime treatments, treating darker skin safely and effectively, and treating year round. So it's questions that we'll now be able to ask that we probably haven't been asking a lot of in the past because a mJoule X just didn't make sense for that configuration.
Yeah, great point. We now have a way into those med spas and other smaller practices. Anything any of you want to add? Let me just check if there was any question. Comments from
Looking at
Josh?
these, sorry, I was just gonna say, looking at these questions here, I mean, to me, it's always about, find the pain before you ever sell the gain. If you go in there and you start slanging specs and how amazing this product is and blah, 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 and you just, try and sell all these features and benefits, you're going to fall flat. It's all about identifying what the need is. Find, no gain without the pain. And I think all these questions do a nice job at least starting the conversation to identify if they actually need this product.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I just noticed in the chat too, Josh, you got a very good point there. As far as those patients or clients that come in and want something done immediately for an event on the weekend, and they come in on Thursday, what can I have done? I've got this event. Needless to say, none of our other procedures are going to be suitable. So it really is that, that no downtime, nice plumping procedure for somebody who has that event on even that evening. As an example, the Allergan rep years ago, she was getting married and she was passing by my house on her wedding day, on the morning of her wedding. And I said, hey, drop in and I'll give you a quick clear circle. It was laser genesis at that point when I was with Kitera. full disclosure. And yeah, treated her on her wedding day with a laser genesis procedure, and off she went to get her makeup done. No problems at all. Yeah.
That absolutely works. Yeah, that's great. And then, I mean, especially in like bigger cities like New York or LA, where you want to have that flawless look for something that same night. I'm sure that's a question you can ask as well to lead it. Okay. Oh, and Josh is adding, there's like no prepping, numbing, and it can be done in less than 10 minutes. Yeah. Now with the new larger spot size, it's super fast. It's literally lunchtime, coffee break kind of treatment. You're in and out, no numbing, no gel, no nothing. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we have those great questions that lead into the conversation. Now, topic number 3 is like, what materials do you bring? You guys mentioned some of them already, but here are just a couple of them. Yeah, who wants to talk about them? There's a lot of B&As, a lot of camp B&As, some of your own from your own customers. Talk to everybody about it.
I'll start. We obviously utilize Showpad, and that's going to be the best tool that we have. Ethan mentioned his demo video. We've been using that pretty much nonstop for the last 3 years. Anytime a conversation came up about this, the subsurface vein illumination display, that's fantastic. It's something that if people have an XLV or another vascular laser like Phil has mentioned, that's something that it's not easy, but it leads to a lot of ins at that point. And then obviously the before and afters, and there's no downtime for these results when we're talking about Clear Silk and Clear V. But Showpad's a tool that we use. We don't use a lot of print material. Yeah, I don't know what else these guys use.
To me, it's all about like what stage of the process you're in, right? So earliest stage, when you're like prospecting, it needs to be something that's very photo driven, something where they can see results, something that's easy to understand, easy to digest. Just looking at this slide here, let's use the SVI kind of lithograph as an example. I would never bring that in high funnel, early stage, right? Because then I'm just leading with features. That's like hey, I'm like halfway through, maybe they haven't demoed yet. Maybe I'm bringing that to something I'll talk about later, the envisioning session, where I can give them like a show me, don't tell me type of tool, so they can get really understand it. But kind of map out like what you like to use when, and to me, seeing is believing up front, and then get more specific as you get closer to the sale is usually how we use our sales tools.
I mean, I don't do a whole lot different from what Austin and Alex said, besides having a few things in the back pocket. Like right there, Altair and Molly Engelsma are both customers in our region, and making sure that you're bringing things that are going to wow them, that, you know, for us to look at Altair's result and say, hey, this was 3 clear silk treatments, and that's a male within the clinic that didn't want to do anything with downtime, but he wanted to make sure his cheeks weren't as rosy. And like Josh said in the chat, to have something that's as easy as less than 10 minutes, no downtime, no numbing, no gel, super easy in and out. Like, what more could a man want going into a clinic for that? And then with Molly there, you know, every time I show that photo, we ask, well, what would you do with this? How would you treat this patient? And a lot of people say, I would have no idea where I would even start with that. And Molly started with clear silk. It's something that they're not touching the skin, right? There's no gel, there's no numbing, and it's easy for her to establish how much pain the patient is in, but also reduce the erythema within the skin. So that question's imperative when you're bringing up technology that they may not even think to use.
I agree, and I mean, I'm the same. It's, you know, the options we've got in ShowPad are endless. And I do agree with you, Alex, that you don't want to go too much into the features straight up. You want to sort of show those before and afters and say, hey, are you missing it? Back to what you sort of said earlier, are you missing out on this type of patient? You know, this patient that doesn't want downtime, that just wants a nice light procedure so that they don't know that they've had anything done. And I think, you know, whilst the male market is changing, there's always been that attitude that, you know, there's a lot of guys that want treatment done, but they don't want that knowledge that they've had something done. And clear silk is definitely one of those procedures that is that softer approach, and their skin changes over time. So, you know, I certainly like the before and afters, and I think a lot of them speak for themselves and really pique that interest.
Right. Love that you're using all those materials, and even if it's not at the first stage, like later on, there's always an opportunity to spark a conversation. Any other comments? Any questions about those?
I'll add one last thing here, and it's something that I've been really focused on with my team this year, which is the concept of the envisioning session and incorporating that into a sales process, right? And the main tool we use for that is Quiller. Quiller is a game changer for us. You know, it's crazy to think it's almost been 2 years since we implemented that here in New England. And you know, having a really dialed in proposal built around clear suite or clear silk is just going to be to your benefit. So if you don't have that already, I'd highly recommend getting those assets in there and being prepared to pitch and propose it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that too. One of the other things I think that we haven't touched on as well is that this is, you know, clear silk and clear V, they are not procedures that cannibalize their other procedures. They're complementary.
I think to just build upon before and afters, if everyone in the field is not using their own customers before and afters, right? It's the real results from people who have bought from you. I think that's the most impactful thing out there. It's great that we have so many before and afters from other clinics on our ShowPad, and I encourage us to send in more so that we can all utilize results like these below. But more often than not, in every demo or meeting that I'm a part of with the team, we're bringing up our derby photos that 20 different clinics utilizing all of our treatments and showing our prospective buyers that this is what people who have bought from us, this is what they're producing in their clinics. And it's important to show that they're being successful fast and they're able to get those results. So before and afters within this are huge.
Okay. Great. So we've covered all the different materials. Let's move on to the next topic. which is the demo. So you've cold called, you did that first conversation, you obviously did get somewhere, and they're now asking you, let's come in for a demo. How do you prepare for that demo? And I know 1064 can be a little tricky, and we're doing our best to provide you guys with tools, whether it's the demo checklist with the helpful tips and tricks or the new demo tool that you'll all be getting. But you guys, from your experience, what do you do? How do you prepare for a demo?
I mean, I'll jump in on this one. And some of you saw my presentation at SKO, and the key to a demo is treating areas, as it says there, the right area or the right type of vessel, making sure you've got that nailed down. Because if you go and do a demo on vessels that are more difficult to treat, periorbital vessels, as an example, vessels that are down around the ankles, you're potentially setting yourself up for failure. Now, can they be treated? Yes, but they're not something that you want to be going in on a demo where, you know, typically on those patients, you're going to be saying, hey, you know, it's a 2 to 3 treatment schedule here. You want vessels that are going to be successfully treated, you know, because that's the wow factor in a demo. What I try and do, and, you know, one of the things I sort of say to the potential customer is, I need you to send me some photos of what we're treating on the day. You need to be prepared for what you're coming up against, because ultimately, as we know, and I don't know who it was, Cooper or someone at one of the presentations said, you know, when you go and do a demo, who are they bringing in? They're bringing in their worst patient, the worst possible patient, or the patient that needs nothing done. That's kind of what we see in a demo, right? So we want to eliminate that, get those photos from them as to who we're treating, and make sure you've got plenty of time in that schedule to be able to go through it all. You don't want to be rushed. So that's kind of my, you know, my off the cuff tip as far as that goes. Know what you're in for.
I'm going to agree with that wholeheartedly. Knowing what you're treating is the biggest thing. I've made the mistake. One of the first ClearV demos I ever did, had no idea what I was treating, showed up, thought I could do it. It ended up badly in a hemosiderin stain. And you don't want to do that. Like, I learned as a young rep that I have to be more prepared when I go into these things, and getting photos, like Phil said. I also would encourage you all to have a KOL in your backyard that's a 1064 expert, where you could send photos and ask for settings based on their experience, because we're doing demos and we understand BBL, Halo, Moxie settings like the back of our hand when we're in demos, to know how to give a safe demo to our prospect. But when it comes to ClearV, it's a little bit more tricky. So having a KOL in your back pocket, I know Cody uses Dr. Ibrahim a lot. I know Mitch has used Dr. Ibrahim a lot. But have those people in your back pocket to show those photos and get guidelines so you can get a result, because, you know, a lot of our prospects want to see a result.
Yeah. And to that point of wanting to see a result, I think, you know, on the Ninja in my region, one thing we do for every single demo is we gate it. We gate it with a pre-demo meeting, and that's imperative. We don't allow them to demonstrate without going through that concept of the envisioning session, which flows through a Quiller. It's a guided approach to a proposal. We're talking through price, we're talking through ROI, we're setting that upfront contract of, you know, what the expectations are. And during that time, we're talking to them about what conditions we're going after, what the types of patients are. We're looking at sometimes photos of those patients if they have them. And ultimately, I kind of talk about like defining the demo. Like you don't have to like outright tell them like how you're defining it, but in your own mind, like what type of demo is this? Like, what are they looking to gather from this? Why are they even demoing? Do they even have to demo, right? Are they the type of practice that just want to feel it because they need to see like what that sight tongue quality feels like? You know, do they want to look at the ergonomics of it? Do they want to see how complicated it is, how easy it is? Or are they looking for a result? And if the answer ultimately is like, we need to see a result from a ClearV demo, well, I'm going to tell you this, not going to happen, because guess what? You're not going to get full clearance after one treatment. You need to sell that shit in a series, right? And so, yes, sure, you'll get blanching and you can show that like nice aha moment. But if that patient comes back 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, and they don't have full clearance, they're going to be upset and you're going to lose that deal. So it's really about like setting that expectation around what are you looking to accomplish and helping them understand that we're not demoing for efficacy, we're demoing for functionality.
I agree. And I think
important to understand about.
sorry, go.
I was just going to say with vascular, and you can speak to this probably better than anybody, Phil, is that the vascular target is a fluid target, meaning that pigment is a static target. So it's often you don't have to worry about like it coming back, but vascular oftentimes will come back. So you can lose demos just by the fact that you're going to, if you're not setting the expectation, hey, that this is the first treatment often of a series, you can get into trouble there because they come back and, hey, it didn't work. The vein, yeah, you got rid of them initially, but the veins came back. If you're not setting that expectation that that's possible, you can get into trouble.
Totally. It's you can almost like, I always do like a tongue-in-cheek joke around, telling the patients, telling the providers, you got to avoid all the fun shit in life after this experience. You can't go out and do stuff that vasodilates your body, exercise, spicy foods, sex, saunas, the list goes on and on, wine, alcohol, right? That's all just going to take that result and throw it out the window. So that all ties into setting the expectation. But Phil, you know much more about this than I do. I don't know why I jumped in there. Sorry.
No, you're good, mate. All good. All good. Totally fine. That it's a fluid target. There is definitely pressure. The other thing you need to be aware of from that demo perspective, and the reason that photos are good too, is that if you have a high level of matting in the medial areas and things like that they're wanting to treat, then chances are there's incompetence in larger vessels. And that's the other thing that we need to be mindful of in a demo. And that results-driven scenario is that, hey, if there's incompetence in the larger vascularity, especially with the leg veins, of course, is what I'm talking here, then our success at demo is going to be limited. We can potentially treat what we see today, and we can get rid of, quite a bit of it, but we need to be very clear that if there's incompetence, it's a holistic approach. We can't just treat the superficial stuff if there's issues with the deeper vessels.
I think you guys pretty well nailed the Clear V part, but I want to touch on Clear Silk. And I think demoing for Clear Silk is one of the easier ones to do. And when I've demoed Clear Silk, I've really hyped up the fact, like, oh yeah, we got to do Clear Silk. Which one he wants to do it? Hop on the table. It's no big deal. We'll be done in 10 minutes. And make it as really as nonchalant as possible. And then when they experience that demo and it's mostly painless, they get that, their skin looks nice right away. And you're like, yeah, that was the easiest thing you've ever done in this clinic, right? And they're always like, yeah. And then when you talk about, it sounds like Alex does it beforehand. We do it post demo, typically talking about pricing. But when we bundle that in, we can, bundle in and say, yeah, if you do this now, we can do Clear Silk for $5,000 instead of $25,000 or whatever the numbers play out to be. But it just adds so much value when you make it so easy. And you're probably demoing BBL to start with anyway. And so Clear Silk is it's nice to just throw it out there as an almost a forgot you if it wasn't the main point of your demo. And it shows just how easy and comfortable and simple it is.
And you can even take that, Austin, and put it into an ROI talk. Like, look how easy that $350 was to make. Right? No downtime, absolutely no effort. Josh says nonchalantness, effort, effect. Like, that's honestly how easy it is. So we do that all the time. We also ask, like, doing stacks treatments, right? Clear Silk is an easy stacks treatment to utilize. So how many of these patients do you think with you have BBL? So if you're doing 5 BBLs in a day, how many of those can you add a Clear Silk to? And would you too? And inputting it into that as well, and really driving the ROI conversation through that. So Alex, Austin, I liked your point on that for sure.
Yeah, and not just Cyton stacks and other laser treatments, but also think about injectables in Clear Silk, because you can do that treatment before any injectable, and then they walk out, they glow, and they got their filler or their Botox or something. So they just got an overall
I
improvement.
think too that sorry, Karen, the trap you don't want to get into with clear silk either, and I totally agree with you, Austin, that it is, you know, that nonchalant approach and how easy it is, and hey, we can treat anybody because we can. But the other thing we need to be mindful of in a demo is ensuring that we're very clear that results, you know, we're not going to see results after one treatment because of the nature of that procedure. You know, there's that whole relevance or that relativity that the easier and less painful a procedure is, the more of them we need. And so, you know, we want to be clear that it's that 3 to 6 treatment protocol for us to start to see a change. Today at the demo, we're not going to see a massive change in this patient, but we want to show you how easy it is to do. And the fact that with our before and after photos in the future, with multiple treatments, you are going to have success.
Yeah. And as Josh is saying in the chat, they're additive, and I would also say they're addictive. 'Cause
I think that
once
you
you get
really
used into that, to them, then it's an addiction, right?
I don't,
Didn't
it's funny.
someone-
I don't know if Josh remembers this, but when we first started and we were like learning this technology together, he coined this term. He said, clear silk is like the, would you like fries with that treatment? And the whole idea is it's like, you know, it's a simple add-on, you know, you're driving through the window,
my
you get a
God.
burger. Would you like fries with that? And it's like, that's Cyton Stacks in a nutshell. It's such an easy upsell. for the practice.
We similar to the fries with that, we call it the salt in your menu of services. And you can have, you know, the heavy hitters, the meat and potatoes are going to be BBL, Halos, Moxies. But what are you doing? You know, what's that final thing that really makes you pop? And it's clear silk. And I told that to a plastic surgeon, and he told me it was a lot of money for salt. And I said they used to fight wars over salt. And we had a signed contract that evening. So I don't think it was my analogy that did it, but he thought that was
I think
pretty
it
funny,
was.
and I've used it ever since. So
Yeah, awesome. Totally love that. All right. Anything else to add to the demo? I don't think so. All right, let's move to the next thing. So how do you highlight some of our competitive advantages? And I was thinking maybe each one of you could take one of them, because I mean, we do have a couple of, for ClearV, couple of things that you can highlight. So who wants to take our SVI? How do you highlight that? How do you talk about it? Which tools do you use to do that?
I'll talk on that one, but I actually want to hear Phil when I finish.
Phil should just take all.
I know. I'm just going to sign off if Phil can do it. But the SVI is one that I actually lean on almost exclusively on Showpad. And this is why I want Phil's opinion. Maybe I'm just not good at it in the demo, but when I've done it in some demos, it just doesn't provide that wow. And so I've used Showpad almost exclusively, and then just kind of tried to do the demo. And if it works, it works. If not, then fine, and I'll blame the lighting or something. But Showpad with the videos that we have, I mean, it just works.
Alex, it depends on or Austin, it depends on the color of the vein. So if you have more of a purple vein, then you got to use more of the yellow hue. And if you have a more blue vein, then you got to use more of the orange hue. And that will probably help you in demos.
Well, maybe I'm just dumb then, because anyway, I don't want to talk too much about my.
Yeah, the more superficial it is, you know, and the way I talk about it to my team is that think about BBL and what or lasers in general and what lighting we use to go deeper, or what wavelengths we use to go deeper, right? The yellow is a more superficial wavelength. The orange is a deeper penetrating wavelength. So the more superficial that the vessel is, if it's red or that purple, then you'll tend to lean towards the yellow. If it's a darker purple and a blue, then you'll lean towards the orange, because that light is going to travel deeper in the skin. Yeah. But
I only
that's
played with a little bit, but does the new
Okay.
clear silk handpiece have different colored lights? I only noticed one color.
The ClearV handpiece?
Or
The
clear V, yeah,
ClearV
excuse me.
Yeah,
Matter.
so the one that we're having on the Joule X has the 2 lights, and you can toggle through both of them. And you can also mix the 2 of them. For the new one, based on customer feedback and feedback from the field, we are just doing 1 color for all of them, and you can change the intensity. So you can toggle through that.
Hooray, it's easier.
Yeah, I hear it's easier too, because sometimes people spend too much time trying to figure out which one's the right light. So we try to make that easier. All right.
And
who
you're
wants to
right.
take-
You're right, Austin. Sometimes you do have to have a little bit of a play to get that right coloration. So that's good to hear, Cara.
Yeah. All right, next up in our list here, the VascuZoom. How do you lead in with that? What do you tell your customers, your leads with that?
I
Any
mean,
volunteers?
I just talk basic laser physics. The bigger the spot, the deeper it goes, right? So the fact that we give you that ability to, and especially anyone who has an existing Cyton 1064 as far as the mJoule 7 goes, the VascuZoom, ability to change spots on the fly like that is gold. And then I'll be honest, that's one of the things when I first come to Cyton from Qterra, that was one of the things that we used to sell against with Cyton. So if you've got any sales reps that are still living in the past, they will compete with us on the 1064 and say, oh no, well with Cyton, you have to change the handpiece to change the spot size, right? And that was definitely something we would sell against Cyton with when I was at Qterra. So the VascuZoom is an important part because you had that ability to change that spot size on the fly. On leg veins, you're going to be treating blues, purples, reds. So the simple fact is you don't have to change hand pieces. You just turn that dial and you can change that spot size depending on the depth of the vascularity.
Yeah, and Cody's pointing out VascuZoom on the dial is only on mJoule X. On the new mJoule, it's going to be integrated into the software. So you change the spot size directly on the software, but it's still there. You can still change the spot sizes on the fly on the system. You don't
Guys
have
are
to
so great at
change
making it easy. Look at that. Hooray. It's now on the screen. Gosh, what could we have asked for? Anything better than that?
Well, and honestly, the coolest part for me about the new spot size adjustments is it doesn't reset all of your other settings. And so, I don't know, sounds like that's a surprise. But if you adjust the spot size, it keeps your settings, which was a common complaint that I got with the existing Clearview.
Wow.
Yeah, we made some changes there because we heard some of those things were annoying. So making it easier. All right, moving along, integrated cooling. How do you guys talk about that? Any tools you use to showcase it?
I think this just goes back to our BBL cooling story, right? Giving yourself the flexibility that we can adjust our cooling to more cold or less cold in 1 degree increments. This isn't overcomplicated part of the process, because if you're overcooling your target, you're obviously not going to be able to cause stasis within the vessel. So the nice thing is if you're not seeing your results, you have one more variable rather than going up in joules that you're able to actually change our cooling to make it a little bit more comfortable or warm up the tissue above the vessel in order to get the actual energy to penetrate to the vessel in the depth that you're going for. So the integrated cooling to me is very much similar to our BBL story, and how you implement that with 1064 is very similar.
Great, love that. And I love the synergy between the two technologies, especially if they already know BBL. All right, and last but not least, our indication-driven software. How do you guys talk about that? Do you showcase it, or what do you do?
Definitely. I think that's one of the showstopper experiences that users have with it. And the way that I jump into talking about that is similar to, frankly, all of these features. Before we talk about the feature itself, you tell a story, you paint the picture around, why this exists in the first place. And so, for me, before I get into the condition-driven software, I might even make a kind of jokey story about, remember back in the day when we used to have the clip around the front loop of the system, and, Susie comes in onto the bench and she gets down and, you're sweating a little bit. She has these leg vessels you want to treat, and you're flipping through up to page 9, what the heck am I looking to even treat? Whatever, you can make it fun is my point. And you get them kind of relating with you about an experience, about a pain that they had before we solved it with this gain, right? And just bringing it full circle on that pain before gain concept. This just makes it stupid simple. It makes them realize hooray, I can delegate this with peace of mind without having to worry about putting a divot in someone's face. Because as we all know, 1064 is a powerful freaking tool. You can hurt people with it. This alleviates that. You don't have to worry about what happens with your providers in the room, because they've got the best condition-driven software imaginable that guides them to quality endpoints safely.
And I'll jump back to cooling on that note without putting
Did
a
I
hole
skip
in some
cooling?
of the notes. Cooling.
Oh, cooling, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right, love it. Love all of that. All right. So Andrea brought that to us, the 5 to know, 5 to show. So I picked that up here as well. And I feel a lot of you guys have heard some of them talk about these things already. But Alex, do you want to get us started with your 5 to know points and maybe highlight some of those that you haven't talked about yet?
Sure. As you guys can kind of tell, I feel like a broken record. A lot of what my 5 to know are kind of thematic of some of the things I've already shared today. But ultimately, I think sales in general is about being a good storyteller. So having a strong story around clear suite, why do we come out with this product? A lot of reps at Sciton will oftentimes talk about, how we go out to the world, of users, of key opinion leaders, and we ask them, what do they like? What don't they like? And if they could build the perfect version of a 1064 vascular box, what does that look like? And Sciton is, usually not, and actually, frankly, hardly ever the first to market with anything. We are usually last to market with something, but we're proud of that because when we come to market with something that's the best. It's differentiated. It has tools, resources, aspects of it that are unlike anything else out there to get the highest quality results. And high quality results lead to, the most profitable procedures because patients want that. They want to keep coming back. So, paint the picture, build a story. I think that's the most important part of everything we do. Once upon a time, I used to talk a lot about Scott Davenport, depending on if the customer is like a derm that's like really well connected in the industry and they know this world well, they're going to know about Phil's former baby, the XLV. And so sometimes I would talk about, Sciton goes out to the world and we look for the ability to make something the best it can be. And we recruited the guy who created XLV. And we asked him, we said, hey, we're not just looking to create another XLV. We want you to create the next generation of that with an unlimited budget. Sciton's not the type of company that wants to soak up as much margin as possible out of a product. We want to come to market with the best possible procedure, something that has patients in mind first and foremost. And sapphire instead of quartz, and the best cooling, and yada yada yada. So, I'll let Ethan take over here because I probably have talked enough about that. But generally, that's my approach to the stories.
Couldn't agree more, Alex. I think, like Alex said, we've talked about a lot of these, but the two I really kind of want to hone on is the history of 1064. Phil mentioned that. I'm pretty sure John Botsford up in Bismarck, North Dakota, bought the Clear V upgrade solely because he never had to change a handpiece from a 3mm to a 6mm ever again. So when you're talking to your current customers, telling them where we came from, and it's part of building a story. Where did Sciton start its 1064 journey? We had a good product, right? But there were some fallacies that came with it, like changing the handpiece, having the separate little cooling plate that you had to utilize with the C drops. There's just so many different steps that you had to utilize within a Sciton 1064 that it just made people not want to buy it. And that's why XLV soared. So by simply fixing the problem of changing the spot size and integrating cooling, he literally was like, this thing is freaking awesome. He even says it in the video on our demo in the show pad. So knowing the history and constructing a story showing why Sciton has changed and why they wanted to change, because we wanted a better end product for overall our providers to give the best results to the patients. And that's ultimately what every clinic wants, is to provide the best results. And then opportunity cost. What are you missing out on? How much redness is walking through your office? I think, like, just even today, me and Karin, bless Karin's heart, she got up super early to jump on a call, 6:45 this morning to work with one of our customers.
Always
doing mJoule V testing. And she said on the call that, well, first I asked the question, how beneficial was it for you to have a second system in your Burnsville clinic? And she said it was unbelievable, because you don't know how many times during the day in a dermatology office where someone, dermatologist, pops into my room and says, hey, could you treat this really quickly? And we asked, how many times is that on average happening? And she said about 10 times a day. One of the 3 providers is coming in and saying, hey, could you get this cherry angioma? Hey, could you zap that vessel? So that could range anywhere between 50 and 300 bucks, depending on what they're doing. So if we took the average of that, or the middle of the median, around 150 bucks, that's 1,500 bucks a day that derm clinic is now no longer having to send away. They're able to not have to book them later on because the other system, the mJoule X, is firing all day. They can easily capitalize revenue and make their payment in 1 week. So the opportunity cost of what vascular and what derm offices and what clinics are utilizing or not utilizing is huge. And it made it very apparent today, just based on that simple question of how valuable having 2 systems was. So,
and just having that smaller system that you can easily wheel into an office or into a room where someone is doing something completely different is priceless. Plug it in. Yeah. Plug it in. Exactly, Kathy. Like plug it in. You don't need a separate outlet for it. There you go. Awesome. Sorry, Ethan, I interrupted you there.
Oh, you're fine. I figured I'll let Austin
Oh, there
take
was
it.
there was also one thing I wanted to add to Alex, because he was pointing out Scott Davenport. And I don't know if you guys have all heard this, but you can add it to your talk tracks. And I know Olivia is working on how we can highlight this, but he recently was recognized by Controversies with a Lifetime Achievement Award for all the work that he's done for the laser and light industry and for all the laser and light devices out there. So he's a celebrity amongst those guys too. So they know him, they value all the contributions he's had. So that's also something we can add to our story.
The godfather of NDAG.
Sorry, say again.
Kidding. I said the godfather of NDAG.
There we go. Yes. You heard it here first. We need to brand that. We no longer have just the godfather of light. We have the godfather of NDAG. All right. So Ethan, if you were done, should we move on to Austin? Austin, how about you? What are your 5 to knows?
Yeah, I'll talk. We've talked about a lot of the other stuff, the videos, the menu of services, gaps, competition. Well, one thing I'll say about the competition, I'm sure everybody knows this, but Cutera is falling apart at the seams, and they can't support a product, they can't fix a product, and probably my first deal selling this mJoule V is going to be a practice that has Laser Genesis and XLV, but they hate Cutera so much that they're going to buy it from me. And so that's one. We didn't talk about that one, cold calling, but targeting Cutera customers. The Limelight is a pretty crappy IPL. The XLV, the Laser Genesis are great products, but Cutera is not doing well. And so the other one I wanted to talk about was laser knowledge and laser physics, and 1064. To me, it really clicked, and it's probably the reason that I'm on this call. When I did John Hoopman's laser course for the second time, and he spends probably too much time talking about 1064, but when you understand the laser physics and how 1064 works and what settings to adjust for the width of the vein versus the color of the vein versus the depth of the vein and why we do all of that, you can be in that demo and you can be in those envisioning sessions or meetings, and you can be the true expert on the technology. And for that reason, I've been able to sell most of my 1064 products without doing a demo on them. Because you come across as this world-renowned expert. Not that I'm world-renowned, but Scott Davenport, who we lean on heavily in our story, is. And it's been a very powerful tool in our arsenal, as much as it is in BBL, but it's been very, very effective for 1064. And it also allows you to talk about, this is something we didn't really talk about, but Clear Silk treats pretty much everything in the skin, from acne scars to acne to browns and reds. Obviously, it's, Aerolaze runs around saying they have a box with, I don't know how many indications they treat. Somebody probably knows, but all it is a dumbed down version of Clear Silk. And so you can use that same talk track and back it up with your knowledge of laser physics, if you have that background knowledge. And so that's been essential for me.
Awesome. How about Phil? I'm sure everybody's curious to know what are your 5? Actually, they can see them, but what's like your number 1, or what's one you want to highlight?
As you can see, mine are more, probably a little more technical based than the other guys, but Austin certainly touched on, on quite a bit there, and that you can see, 1064 physics and competition are 2 of mine as well. And for me, the 1064, especially Clear V, it is much more of a technical sell scenario, and that knowledge of 1064 is important. I think, you know, the whole scenario with your competition, there's, you know, a spec sheet, effectively a spec sheet is bullshit. You know, and competitive reps will go in with their spec sheet and say, look, I can get 900 joules per centimeter squared. You know, Cyton can only get 300, or, you know, whatever it might be. To be honest, I don't even know what our top fluence is, because you're never going to use it, right? It's like driving a Ferrari in a 40-kilometer-hour zone. You're never going to, you know, you're just not going to bother. And one of the things that I talk about too is the endpoints, you know, and it links in with the laser physics side, is know what your endpoints are, and understand with the bigger veins that constriction, you know, you're seeing constriction and a slight color change, not necessarily disappearance and things like that. And where I bring that back to the physics and the parameters is that you don't need more than you need with vessels. We don't need 900 joules. You know, whatever our top fluence is on our own device, we don't need it, because you only need as much as you need to shut down a vessel, and that's all you need. If you go further, if you go harder, you're going to pop the vessel and you're running the risk of an adverse event. So for me, that's definitely a talk track, because your competitors are going to talk about how powerful they are and so on and so forth. It's irrelevant. The relevance is being able to deliver sufficient energy to the target to give us that desired endpoint. And that's something you need to be aware of and talk about, is that, hey, we don't need more than we need when it comes to vessels. When we're not about creating adverse events here. So that's why we don't need to worry about 900 joules of fluence and so on and so forth.
Love it. All right. Last slide here, the 5 to show. I know you all talked about some of those already, but maybe what is a new thing that you haven't talked about a lot yet? Alex, you want to get us started here?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'll just kind of encapsulate all these things together, and especially in a demo where you're mainly going to be showing this. I always like to think, like, make it as simple and fun as possible. Like, do not get into the weeds of like unless you're in front of like a derm who's like really jiving with a lot of the science. Like, my whole thing in a demo is make it easy, make it seem as frictionless as possible to integrate it into their practice and have fun with it. So ways to make it look easy, it's like use that vessel card and show them how that ties right into the software for dialing and pulse durations, right? And then I'll oftentimes, to that last point there, to show the blanching, I'll oftentimes take a quick photo on my phone of what we're going after, especially, and this is more BBL, but it applies to Clear V as well, of like, say, like a little telangiectasia. I'll get right in there with the flash, take a quick photo and say, okay, now zap that. And I'll go right in afterwards and I'll flash that and take a photo again. And then I'm almost like creating an in the moment VNA, and I'm going back and forth on my phone between the two. And they're like, whoa, they're like, their mind blown, because it's like, it's clear, right? They love that. And so it's like, you're making it fun, you're making it easy, and you're showing them a seeing is believing right in the moment. So that's kind of how I show, specifically Clear V. I'll let the other guys speak to Clear Silk.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Ethan, I know you have your Botsford video that's legendary forever and ever. Anything else?
I think the audio of it's even more legendary if you turn up the volume. We're just two nerds playing with a laser, but no. Everything Alex said spot on. You got to have fun with it. You got to make it easy. Already touched on like a KOL, whether it's for ROI or for getting results, have them on speed dial. John Botsford's demo video, vessel card. I keep a vessel card in my wallet, and that's always a fun way to pull it out and just be like, check it out. Like, I keep this in my wallet, super important. You never know when you're going to come across a vessel, right? Just stupid stuff like that, but it's fun, and it makes it easier. But then I think one thing that we haven't talked about is the Clear Silk thermal video, where you can actually show and see the redness coming to, like, the skin getting to the right temperature. And I love that video, and I show that video in every Clear Silk demo I've ever done. And I think it's important to show them what's happening underneath the skin as well, to give them that visual of, wow, this is actually causing that much heat, and they're comfortable and it's easy, and it's just another thing to wow them with. So anything that you can do to wow them, that's your goal in a demo. And
Yeah, I love that video too. And also it shows the speed and it shows how comfortable the patient is because the patient's there laughing and talking. So clearly no discomfort. So
Can I add one
absolutely
last
love
thing?
it too.
Real quick, I did this yesterday and I've been doing it a lot, like in the last year. And specifically with the vessel card, you can do this with like Moxie or Halo tips. But after you're done with the demo, like I'll go over to whoever the ultimate decision maker is, and I'll either grab the Moxie tip, the Halo tip, or in my case, I always keep a demo card right in my, or excuse me, a vessel card right in my pocket. And I hand it to them, I go, for the future, and kind of like smile at them. And if they grab it, it's a really strong indicator that they want to buy the product because they're in their mind, they're thinking, hey, I'm going to use that in the future. If they're like, no, don't worry about it, I then know, okay, I still have some work cut out to do. And I swear it's like such a subtle little weird thing, but it's worked really well for me on judging if they're going to buy the product or not. And it's fun to do with the vessel card.
Right, super clever. Love that. All right, we're actually over time, so let's see. Austin and Phil. Austin, you want to
Yeah,
go next?
let me go next, and then I got to log off. One of the things, the Campo course, continuing education is a very common theme that we run into competitive wise, that it doesn't happen. And it's obviously something that we pride ourselves on at Sciton. And, we want to make the 1064 as easy as possible, everything as easy as possible in the demo. But at the end of the day, people are probably going to need a little bit more help long-term. And that Campo course is a phenomenal tool to talk about and include in the deal. So that they can become true experts on the technology. And if you're with, a nerd like Ethan and I and half the people on this call, then you can really use that to say, this is where I learned my, my base knowledge information, and it's where you'll become, an expert with the technology and really make it worth the practice this time.
Love that. Phil, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I think the thermal video Ethan touched on as far as clear silk, that's a definite, because of that, the lack of aggression in treatment. We want to show what's happening. The other thing is the cooling capacity, because there are a lot of devices that don't necessarily cool efficiently, and then that risks the skin. So for me, one of my tricks that I'll do is when I'm talking about cooling, I'll grab the doctor's hand and hold their hand and just put the handpiece on their hand. And it's cooling, and it ends up hurting so much. It ends up cooling so much. They're like, geez, that's cold. It's like, yeah, we're protecting the skin, right? And so you'll explain the cooling while you've got it in contact with the hand. And, they realize that we're not full of crap when it comes to our cooling, and we make sure it works. So, yeah.
Awesome. Love it. All right. And with that, I would like to thank our panelists today. That was awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge. And I would say, let's go. Let's sell some mJoule with 1064. Let's sell some Clear Silk. And yeah, as always, reach out if you have any questions, and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, Karen.
Great job, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You guys.